So I will be jumping in between showing the presentation and showing my wiring board that I have right down here, which I'm actually going to go ahead and angle to. Sorry if you can see my laptop in the corner here, but that's just going to have to be how it is. So this is FTC wiring. We're going to go ahead and get started. I am Rylee, in case you guys weren't here for the last presentation. I am a senior this year. This is my 7th season with Bronc Botz. I've been our wiring lead for several years now, and I'm our FRC team captain. Dylan is actually doing our programming workshop right now, so we're going to go ahead and skip through him. So here is the link and the QR code to the official FTC wiring guide. I would recommend that you use this as a reference when you're working. It is a very good resource. Personally, we've used this, I know. So I'm going to give everyone a second to scan that. So please go ahead and feel free to scan that. I'll give everyone another second or two. And we're going to go ahead and move on. So couple of general things. The tools that you're going to need are crimps, snips, a small flathead screwdriver. We use a Wago, but it doesn't need to be a Wago. A wire stripper. You may or may not need this. This is more if you're going to be using Andersons. And a label maker. I do recommend that just for organizational sake. And then zip ties, that just keeps everything kind of organized. When it comes to major components, there's something new this year. You've got a control hub. I don't have one. They are brand new. The only person right now in San Antonio who has one is Mr. Clark McChesney. So I believe that he is currently, or he will be going over that in his programming workshop that's happening right now, but I personally don't have one. They are very similar. They look very similar to the expansion hubs that we'll go over in a second. And basically it's an expansion hub with a built-in robot controller phone, in that there is no longer going to be a phone on the robot if you have a control hub. Right now, the control hub is optional. You can have a phone or a control hub, but not both. Your control hub, if you need additional motors or servos, gets partnered with an expansion hub. The expansion hub expands on the control hub. And you can use up to 8 motors or I believe 10 servos. There's a couple different sensors. Dylan was going to go over that because he is my programmer. I don't have enough background information personally to do that. But again, there's resources everywhere, so I'd recommend that you go look at that. Your expansion hub is the power and data distribution for your motors and your servos. So this is your motor and servo controller and your sensor connection point. Your expansion hub either connects to a control hub or connects to a phone. And you can have up to 2 on the robot. You cannot have a control hub and 2 expansion hubs. You can have 1 control hub and 1 expansion hub, or 2 expansion hubs and phone, if that makes any sense. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for a second and go ahead and we're going to look at my screen, or at my kind of little setup here. I apologize for it being a bit of a mess. This was kind of a last minute situation, but you'll notice I have expansion hubs here. They, again, very similar to the control hub. You'll notice that one is gray and one has an orange stripe here. And you'll notice that there's 4 motor ports and 5 servo ports. And then you've got a couple wires. I'm actually missing one of the wires that connects the 2 expansion hubs, but that's okay. So we're going to go back to sharing my screen. We're going to go ahead and move on. So this is the kind of diagram right now. This is using a control hub, but it is essentially the same thing. As the expansion hub. All of your ports are going to be the same. They're all going to look the same. They're all going to plug in the same way. So you've got your motors, your different kind of sensors and other ports, and then your servos at the bottom there. So just so you know, keep that in mind. Control Hub and Expansion Hub, I'm going to drill this in your minds. They are basically the same thing. They just, the Control Hub has a phone built in. So there is that. I'm going to go over a battery. I think that these are pretty self-explanatory. Almost everyone has used one before. I do want to point out one thing that my team does that's a little different. We use what's called Andersons. If everyone can see this. These are universal connections. So this is 2 wires. You'll notice that we have Andersons on our motors. We have them on our connectors to our expansion hub. We have them on the connector to the battery. This is our universal connection. So these can plug in, any Anderson can plug into any other Anderson as long as they're the same size of Anderson. And it basically makes it so that everything is versatile. If I were to plug this motor into this, into this battery, which I'm not going to do because that is bad, the motor would begin to run. Again, I'm not going to do that because that can mess up your battery and your motor. Power-wise, you just really don't want to do that. But here's the batteries that we use. You can also use the REV Slim batteries. It really doesn't matter what you use. We just use those because that's what we already have. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. Can everyone see that good? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. I'm sharing the right screen, right? Stop and reshare. Sorry, y'all. I'm a bit of a mess. Okay, so the battery. It's a 12-volt battery. They have chargers that come with them, or you can purchase individually. You are only allowed 1 battery per robot, and your battery will only attach to one of your controller expansion hubs. It does not attach to both. You attach the battery to one expansion hub or control hub, and then you actually have a power wire in between the two. If I go back, I don't have a slide. Okay, yeah, so in this bottom picture here, you've got the red, white, and blue cable is your communication cable. On the setup that I have right now, it is black, white, and blue. And then you have, you see that red and black XT extension cable. That is what you would use to connect the power on your 2 hubs. Main switch. This is what turns on and off your robot. Let me go ahead and stop screen sharing here. I have one set up right here. If everyone can see that. When I turn it on, you'll notice that my one expansion hub turns on. You see that the other one is not turning on because I am missing currently that power cable. That power cable would go from this little yellow port right here to this little yellow port right here. And once those 2 are connected, then my second expansion hub would turn on. My main switch here is just an on and off. You'll notice that it's connected over here to my battery. And then it's just the connection between the battery and the expansion hub here. It's not, I think it's required. Don't quote me on that. It may or may not be required. I would look at the game manual for that. But a couple of things. One, you'll notice in the picture that's on the slide that I'm going to share right now, that we've got this little clear part here. I personally, our team uses one that's black, but it looks exactly the same. It can be used to mount your switch onto a piece. I would be very, very careful about where you are mounting things, because if another robot accidentally hits your main switch, your robot turns off and your robot is not getting turned back on. Just keep that in mind. Okay, phones. You have a robot controller and you have a driver station. Your robot controller is now optional. That is the phone that would be replaced by the control hub. That's the phone that's on your robot. connected via USB Mini to your expansion hub. And, you know, the robot controller talks to the driver station and vice versa. This is what you put your code onto, and it runs the code on the robot. And also, this is what a lot of teams use for vision. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this one on. The phone that I'm currently using is actually not legal anymore, but I just wanted to show kind of what the robot controller interface looks like. You see a picture right there. Here's an actual phone that uses it. Because the last game was Star Wars, it makes Star Wars noises when it can't access the expansion hubs. But there's that. Not terribly important. It's exactly what you just saw. You will notice on here, there is an orange, oh, it's gonna do it again. If an orange error pops up down here, just like that, you can kind of see that orange error. That usually means that your expansion hub, your phone is not interfacing with your expansion hub. That's a problem. And there's a couple ways to kind of troubleshoot that we can talk about at the end. You've got your driver station. So your driver station is still around. It's not going anywhere as of right now. This is going to interface with your control hub. So this is what's actually connected via usually a USB cord to a USB splitter that connects to your controllers. Not attached to the robot, connected to the joysticks with the drivers. And like I said, it interfaces with the robot controller or the control hub. Here is this. Looks like this when it's actually connected to a robot. It will, let me turn up the brightness a little bit, or not, that's fine. But when it's plugged in and actually connected, you'll notice this big int button. You'll go down and select either autonomous or teleop and then press INT right here, or INIT, which is initiate. And that'll go ahead and begin to, then you'll see a play button, and that play button will run your program. So on the screen here, that you'll see a stop. That's once the program is already running. It also will tell you what your ping is, so how good your connection is to your control hub or other phone. And also tells you what the team number is. This network right here is going to be your team number, and then RC or DS. And then how good your battery is running at, and what your battery phone percentage is, and stuff like that. Okay, next thing is motors. There are a couple different types of motors. There's an approved list and an unapproved list, I believe, that you can find in things like the game manual. These are going to be wired into your expansion hub or control hub. It's impossible to plug these in the wrong way. They made it that way. That was pretty smart. And you can have up to 8 motors. You'll notice I have a REV hex motor right here, which has a loose axle, which is not good, but that's okay. You'll notice that it's plugged in right here. And also you'll notice that it has an encoder wire that plugs in right next to it. You've got 4 of those slots on each expansion hub or control hub. So that basically just means that, you know, you'd have up to 8 motors on your robot. You don't have to have 8 motors, but you can't have more than 8 motors. So we're gonna go ahead and share my screen again. We personally tend to stick to Pitsco, Anti-Mark, or REV for our motors. We have never, well, I think our middle school team has used Go Builder motors, but I personally have never, so I'm not going to speak on that. But I have heard that they're pretty nice. Sorry, y'all, I keep yawning. All right, encoders. That's the wire that I was just talking about, the additional wire that's plugged into motors. It keeps track of the movement of the motors. So basically, It can tell you how many rotations your motor has made. It's typically built in, and it's going to be like a 4-pin cable. So we personally really like them. Some motors will need what's called a level shifter in order to convert the encoder wire to the wire that plugs into the expansion hub. The REV Hex motor does not need the level shifter. It has a port for the right cable. But these are really good for autonomous. They, I'm sorry, I keep yawning. They are very useful for autonomous functions because you can control exactly how far, and you can tell a lot more accurately how far your motors are going. Servos. We tend to use those because you can only use 8 motors. You can use 10 servos in addition to 8 motors. So your servos are going to be a lot less powerful than your motors are. That's okay. They're good for things like small claws or moving a small mechanism. I have a REV smart robot servo right here, plugged in right here to the 0 port on my my number 2 expansion hub. They're labeled with the colors right here, so you can actually see which way to plug them in so that it's the right way. These are really awesome. I will say that servo screws tend to disappear really fast or get stripped really fast, so just keep that in. It's a 3-wire PWM wire. The colors, they're labeled right there. You can kind of see that like little white box right above the orange. I'm going to block over the orange. Yeah, those little boxes right there. Those tell you what colors need to go where, so just keep that in mind. If you plug them in backwards, it won't work. You can have, oh yeah, you can have 12 servos with the hubs. I'm sorry, it's 0 to 5, which means that there's 6 here. So you can have 12 servos and 8 motors, up to 12 motors, or 12 servos. These are wired, they're wired right into here. I showed you guys that. The cool thing about this is that when they're powered on, they actually resist motion. So they essentially lock. Motors don't tend to lock one way or another, but servos do. You'll notice in the top right hand, let's see here, let me share my screen. In the top right hand corner right here, it says FTC and FRC legal. That is a servo power module for high power servos. It connects right into your control hub. We personally, I don't think use them. I don't think we've used them since like 2018. So if you are interested in that, I would do your own personal research because I can't necessarily speak on it. It's been a very long time. But I would recommend that you look into them because these are going to help you with stronger, bigger servos. So there's that. Okay, a couple of sensors. Hold on. Our missing presenter just woke up. So sensors. We haven't used any, it's been a little while, but you'll notice that they've got kind of interesting labels, external sensors. I will go ahead and show you guys. You've got 3 types of sensors, AIO, DIO, and I2C, or maybe 1,2C. I think it's I2C. You've got right here. So you have the ability to plug in up to 4 I2C servos. Those are these 4 right here labeled with the orange. Then you've got digital, which is DIO. Those are going to be right here. And then you have 2 spots for analog or AIO. There's a wide variety of sensors. There's all kinds. Please keep the chat for questions only. If we see people putting stuff in the chat that isn't a question, we are going to have to remove you guys from the Zoom. So please go ahead and keep the chat for questions only. So there's a wide variety of sensors. There is I believe there's a comprehensive list somewhere in the manual, but if there's not, there's a some kind of list of approved sensors. Or if you look it up, there's all kinds of resources about teams who have used different sensors. Vision-wise, I would recommend that you just stick with using the phone because there's a whole program already in place for that. And it's all set up to where it's easier for teams to use already. But you've got kind of ultrasonic sensors, you've got limit switches, pressure pads, and all kinds of sensors like that. Again, I haven't done FTC in a while. Anyone that I've been helping has not asked me questions about servos because I am not a programmer. That is not my expertise. I just plug things in and then tell the programmers to have at it. So if you want more information on that, I would recommend that you do your personal research or reach out to Dylan, who is our resident programming. What is he? Sorry, y'all. He's our programming mentor. That was what I was looking for. So, wire management. I was talking about Anderson's earlier. The general colors, because the general wire colors are red and black, but I know that my team personally has purchased blue and orange in the past. Okay, I just got a question saying, can we use up to 8 motors? Or can you have over or not? So you can only have 8 motors. 8 motors is the maximum number of motors that you can have plugged in between a control hub and an expansion hub or 2 expansion hubs. Beyond that, you have to use servos, and I believe the max is either 12 or 16. And you can get high-powered servos that will run almost at the capacity of motors, but you have to do a pretty good amount of research in order to find good servos that will run like that are not going to suck down a bunch of power. Did I answer that question okay? If you have kind of an additional add-on question. Okay, perfect. So back to Anderson's. We have used blue and orange before. But red and black are kind of the easiest just because that's usually the color of the wire that they're getting attached to. The cool thing about Anderson's is that one, any Anderson will plug into any other Anderson, and also you can add a zip tie around your Andersons. So I'm going to grab a zip tie right now and I'm going to stop screen sharing. Once everybody can see my screen in a second, you'll notice that I have 2 Andersons plugged in. Now this is between the wire that's going to my motor and the wire that's attached to my expansion hub. I can actually slip a zip tie in between my red and black wires, and I can actually zip tie this shut. And what that does is it makes it impossible for anything to pull apart my 2 Andersons. Well, not impossible, but a lot more difficult for anything to pull apart my 2 Andersons. This is really effective, especially if you're going to have something that's moving up and down that could potentially get caught. We use these religiously in FRC and also in FTC. The other cool thing is that so you'll notice that, this particular wire right here is only so long. If this wire is all the way on, if this motor is all the way on the other side of my robot, what's really cool is that I can plug this in here to my motor, and I can have a whole additional Anderson in between these 2, and I don't have to worry about anything because it's not going to make any difference. So by having everything be Anderson, I can actually just add in extenders, wire extenders, without having to do any kind of any kind of additional funky wiring or soldering or anything else. These are not soldered on, these are actually crimped on. There's all kinds of videos on this, but you'll notice this set of crimps right here. So actually you take an exposed wire, you strip off the plastic on the end of the wire, and you'll notice, let me screen share again for just a second. Right here, you have got these little metal kind of things. They've got a little kind of on the end. I can actually, if I can find a small screwdriver, I can pry the end out of one of these and show you guys.
We have a question on soldering on one of those ends.
Yeah, I'm answering it right now.
Okay.
Okay. So, just give me 1 second. I'm trying. Promise I'm trying. I'm working on prying one of the Andersons apart right now so that I can show you guys that they are not soldered on. It's just crimped onto the end of the wire. It's really not cooperating, which is kind of frustrating. I don't have the Anderson box on me right now. Oh, got it. Okay. So, sorry, y'all, that took a really long time. So you'll notice that there's this little metal addition on the end of the wire right there. You'll see it's got a little bump right here. Basically, on the inside of this little plastic casing, there's a little metal bar. This little hook slides over and hooks onto the little metal bar, and then it just, it's attached right in here. So there's no soldering involved with this. You just take the crimps, you slide, if you're doing this brand new, you put your little attachment in here, you crimp it onto your wire, and then it can be a little finicky sometimes, it can be a little difficult to do, but then you basically just wiggle. I like to take a screwdriver and press it in, but you just take it and you wiggle it in, and then it'll settle right on in there, and then it's not coming off anytime soon. So these are usually pretty secure. I just bent these ones, so they're not going to be as secure now, but these aren't coming off, and this is now a universal connector without any soldering. Mr. Schutze put in the chat an option for purchasing bulk power poles and crimpers from AndyMark. I highly recommend that you guys do this. Andersons are just a really great way to have a really good connection and be really versatile and be able to fix wires really easily in the middle of competition and troubleshoot and stuff like that. So that's Andersons. I'm going to talk a little bit more about wire management. Are the AndyMark wires compatible with REV parts? You know, it kind of depends on what you're specifically talking about. Can you maybe specify that question a little bit more? Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll move on. So, okay, so here's a connection that is the small little yellow part that I was talking about earlier that goes to the Anderson. I actually have one of those. I actually have one of those on this robot right here. It's right here. You can make these yourself just by taking one of these that's a double-ended wire and just making your own Anderson, or you can purchase them, that's fine too. And it's right here. It's really simple. I will say, a lot of the time with these small yellow ends, I notice that teams do not take care of them. These small yellow ends have come off more times than Andersons last season than I can tell you. I have soldered so many of these back on for teams. So please, 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 please be gentle with these because they come apart really easily and they're a pain in the butt to put back together. But yes, the Andersons are compatible with anything because you can cut any wire and put an Anderson on the end of it. When the batteries come, let me go back to the battery one. Okay, you'll notice in the top, let me share my screen. Okay, in the top right-hand corner, you'll notice the battery that you literally just saw on my wiring board. But if you look at the end right there, you'll notice a small white attachment. That's what comes on all those batteries. We actually cut that off and put the Anderson on. Because Andersons are just so universal, we can plug them into anything, and that's what we use FTC and FRC wise. We just find that it's a lot simpler and a lot more universal, and that we can plug anything in anything, and it's just better that way in general. Okay, wire management wise, there's 3 types of wire management. A lot of this, I do a lot more FRC wiring at this point than I do FTC wiring. So I will say, this is what I use to manage FRC wires. I would not necessarily use all of this on an FTC wiring board. But you'll notice on the top left, this is wire coil, also known as spiral wrap. It's just a plastic wrap that basically keeps a bundle of wires together. You might think that when spiral wrap comes, it looks pretty small. Oh, it's not gonna fit around my wires. My wires are, you know, like a quarter, like kind of like the thickness of a quarter when you bundle them all together. I promise that with enough finagling, you can get spiral wrap around anything. That stuff is awesome. On the top right, you see wire management pads. They're basically little sticky pads that allow you to zip tie anything to anything. I love these things. They're amazing. They make it easier than maybe zip tying something into a piece of metal, because trying to get a zip tie down into a piece of metal and then back up can be really, really annoying. So basically, this just attaches to anything, and then you can zip tie through it, and it's just super awesome. And then on the bottom, you see drag chain. This is specifically the one that I'm talking about when I say FRC. We use these on FRC lifts. You could use it on an FTC lift. I think that they're probably just a little bit much. But drag chain is essentially a wire management that only bends one way. So you'll notice that on the top there, it's flat. It actually will do that naturally. It will only curve in one way. And then when you try to bend it the other way, it will remain flat. So drag chain is super awesome because it'll keep all of your lift wires nice and straight and all in one place. So that's pretty cool. Debugging wise, there's not a ton of debugging that happens on FTC wiring other than ports going bad is kind of the biggest thing that I've noticed, because if you don't treat them well, you can definitely mess up the ports really, really easily, especially the USB mini ports on the end of your expansion hub to your phone. Those have gotten messed up so many times on so many expansion hubs, and they're really, really expensive. I will say that if you send it back to REV, I believe that they'll fix it and or send you a new one if they can't fix it. But don't quote me on that. I don't know if it has to be certain conditions or anything like that. So do your research on that. And just be really careful with your wires. Like I said, anything that has that small yellow end that deals with the power between the battery and the expansion hub, those little yellow ends come off really easily. I would just be very careful when you're messing with those. Be very gentle when you're pulling them in and out. Pull them in and out as little as possible. And if one of them does get damaged, it is possible to fix it if you have a soldering iron. It's really not possible if you don't. Part of this debugging slide is from our FRC one, so there's not really as much of this because there's not as much wire that happens here. But if you're having an issue, like if your motor is plugged into your expansion hub and everything seems to look good, I would go piece by piece, plugging and unplugging things in to make sure that things work, to figure out where your problem is. Or ask someone else for help. Here's our resources page. I know that I didn't take up the full time on this. You know, there was supposed to be some programming stuff in here that I don't know enough about to be comfortable talking about. And, you know, Dylan had to jump out, which is okay. But if you guys have additional questions, please ask them now. I'm going to go ahead and leave this slide up for a minute. There's all kinds of resources on this page, not just for wiring, not just for CAD, for awards, for anything that you can think of. And I have FTC and FRC resources for those of you who are doing FRC. I'll leave that up for just another second or two. All right. And then this is our contact us page. This is my email and then Dylan's email. He is, like I said, our programming mentor. So if you have any kind of programming questions or wiring questions that pertain to programming, like sensors, I would recommend that you ask him because he's going to be kind of the person to talk about that. So another question, is there an easy way to wirelessly connect the control hub to your programming computer? You know, that's a really good question. Control hubs are brand new. They're not something that I've ever used before. Let me quick Google. I personally wouldn't recommend it. I find that it's probably better to just wire it straight in. I know that can be really annoying, but I think that that's probably just a lot easier. You've got to do kind of your own research because I don't know enough about the control hub yet to really speak on it because it's brand new. I've never even held one in my hands before. So, you know, I really don't know. Okay, so Mr. Schutze just said that there's a pretty good video on the REV website that walks you through a wireless setup. So there you go. I can actually, let me go grab that. I'll go find that video and give you guys the link on that, if I can find it. I think that's probably it. There we go. Okay, so there is that link for everyone. I apologize about not having more information about the control hub. Yes, Asia just said that. So Clark McChesney is a World Championships FTA. He FTAs for both of the leagues that Mr. Gabe runs, North San Antonio and Hill Country, and I believe he also FTAs for a couple of other leagues in San Antonio. He knows a lot more. Yeah, I'll go ahead. I don't know. Let me grab his email. He is going to know a lot more about the control hubs than I do because he actually has his hands on one. And I would recommend reaching out to him before me because, like I said, I really don't know what I'm doing necessarily. So I'm grabbing his email right now. Okay, there's his email. I just sent that in the chat. So please, please reach out to him. He knows a lot more than I do. But in the near future, please also feel free to reach out to me once I have my hands on one and have had a little bit more access to working with one. I will likely have a bit more information and a bit more kind of an idea on how this stuff works. And I would go ahead and you guys are welcome to reach out to me farther into the season once I've had a bit of time to figure out what's going on with it. All right, are there any more questions? We can wrap this up about 10 minutes early and give everyone a break before kickoff festivities start. All right, y'all. All right, thanks everyone for watching and listening to me ramble for the last 40 minutes. Like I said, that Bronc Botz resources page is there for anyone and everyone to access. Asia is right, we have an Instagram and a Twitter. You guys are more than welcome to DM us on there. You can email Dylan or I if you have Mr. Gabe's contact info. I'm sure Mr. McChesney would be happy to answer anything for anyone as well. So please ask as many questions as you need to. We are here to help you guys out. And yeah, so everyone go ahead and take a break. Kickoff festivities will be starting right at 11. The game reveal will be from 11 to 12. We'll have a field walkthrough and then a lunch break, and then everything will be starting back up at 1:30. I'll go over the rest of the workshops really quickly for anyone who's interested. Starting at from 1:30 to 2:30, you've got scouting for virtual events, connect and motivate awards, and remote events and how that's going to work. And then from 2:10 to 2:40, you've got a league coaches meeting, which I do believe is probably only for league coaches. A game strategy with me and Dylan. I highly, highly recommend. We're going to talk about kind of general strategies and what mechanisms we think we're going to see and what will be most successful. And then a digital or virtual engineering notebook workshop. And then from 2:45 to 3, there will be a final field walkthrough and event closeout. Please let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you guys at kickoff.